The lantern swayed gently in the darkness, just far enough ahead to make you wonder if you were imagining it. Out on the Ohio River at night, there weren't many lights to see, just the glow of a cooking fire on a flatboat deck or the rare flicker from a settlement tucked back in the trees. But this one was different. It was steady, it was deliberate, and it came from the mouth of a black opening in the bluff, high and wide enough to swallow the river whole. A voice called out over the water, low and friendly. "Tie up for the night, friend. Warm fire, whiskey, good company." For weeks you'd been floating downstream, steering your flatboat west toward the Mississippi. The Ohio was the artery of the frontier, carrying settlers, traders, and fortune-seekers into the wilderness. The journey was long, the nights cold, and any promise of shelter was welcome. You couldn't know it yet, but this was no tavern. The men who called to you from the shadows were not hosts. They were predators, and you had just drifted into their den. The place was called Cave in Rock, 50 feet high at the mouth and stretching nearly 200 feet back into the limestone bluff. It was a cathedral of stone carved by water over millennia. From the river, it looked like the entrance to another world. Inside, the ceiling arched high above, trapping echoes and shadows in equal measure. For centuries, it had been a natural landmark for Native Americans and explorers. But in the 1790s, it became something darker. Samuel Mason made sure of that. Mason had fought in the Revolutionary War, serving as a captain in the Virginia militia. War taught him how to lead men, how to fight, and, most dangerously, how to live by his own rules. After peace came, he didn't take up farming like many veterans. Instead, he drifted toward the gray edge between respectability and crime. In the rough, half-settled lands along the Mississippi, law was thin. A clever man with a hard hand could make a living in ways the courts didn't approve of. By the late 1790s, Mason was robbing travelers on the Mississippi, stealing horses, and dabbling in counterfeiting. The Ohio River's constant flow of settlers was a gold mine waiting to be tapped. When he discovered Cave in Rock, he saw its potential instantly. The high bluff gave a commanding view up and down the water. The cavern could store loot, shelter men, and hide boats from passing eyes. He didn't run it alone for long. Word travels fast among outlaws, and Mason's operation drew some of the most dangerous drifters on the frontier. Chief among them were Makaja and Wiley Harp, known to history as Big Harp and Little Harp. The Harps were unlike most criminals. They weren't content with robbery or fraud. They were killers for the sake of killing. Born in North Carolina, they had fought as Tory raiders during the Revolution, using the chaos of war as an excuse for murder. Afterward, they roamed Kentucky and Tennessee, leaving a trail of bodies, men, women, even children. They joined Mason at Cave in Rock, and their brand of violence gave the gang a reputation that chilled even seasoned rivermen. The method was simple and terrifyingly effective. A flatboat coming downstream at night might see the glow of a fire near the cave's mouth. Voices would call out, offering hot food, drink, and a safe place to tie up until morning. In a wilderness where hospitality could mean survival, many boatmen steered toward that light. They'd beach their craft below the bluff, climb the short path to the cave, and step inside. The welcome would last only as long as it took to get them into the shadows. Once inside, the gang closed ranks. Rifles leaned against the walls. Knives flashed. The victims would be ordered to hand over money, goods, and weapons. Sometimes Mason spared them, sending them adrift without oars or supplies, letting the river finish them off. But often, especially when the Harps had a say, the end came quick and brutal. Big Harp was a giant of a man with hands like hammers. One story claims he once killed a man by lifting him off the ground and smashing his head against a tree trunk, because it was faster than using a blade. The Harps' cruelty was senseless even by outlaw standards, and their victims were left to float downstream, or buried in shallow graves along the riverbank. The cave's isolation made it nearly impregnable. From the mouth, sentries could watch the water for miles. If trouble approached, the gang could vanish into the interior, slipping out through hidden paths into the forest above. The nearest towns were days away by river, and most militia units wouldn't risk the trip unless they had numbers and a strong reason. For a few years, Cave and Rock was the most feared spot on the Ohio. River pilots whispered warnings at landings upstream. Families traveling west heard the stories, some true, some exaggerated. But the current didn't allow much choice. To reach the Mississippi, you had to pass the bluff, and the pirates knew it. Their crimes grew bolder. Mason's men would sometimes pose as traders, drifting alongside unsuspecting boats before drawing weapons. Other times they set traps, floating logs into the channel to force boats toward the shore where the cave lay waiting. The goods they stole, barrels of flour, bolts of cloth, kegs of whiskey, were traded upriver through shady contacts or sold to itinerant merchants. But the river was also a gossip line, and word of the gang's brutality spread. In 1799, a flatboat crew recognized Mason's men and fought back, escaping to tell their story. By then, the Harps had grown restless. They left the cave to resume their bloody rampage inland, murdering more than 20 people in Kentucky and Tennessee before their reign ended. Big Harp shot dead by a posse, his head mounted on a pole. Little Harp captured, tried, and hanged. Without the Harps, Mason's gang lost some of its edge, but the robberies continued. Mason himself began moving south, seeking new hunting grounds along the Mississippi. By 1803, his luck ran out. Captured near Natchez, Mississippi, he was offered leniency if he turned over his loot. He tried instead to bribe his captors. They killed him for the bounty, severing his head and delivering it to Natchez to claim the reward. Cave and Rock fell silent. The fires stopped burning at its mouth. The laughter and gunshots that had once echoed off its stone walls were replaced by the slow drip of water and the whisper of wind through the entrance. But its legend remained. Rivermen still pointed it out to passengers, telling them of Mason, the Harps, and the unlucky souls who had believed the wrong light on a dark night. Today, Cave and Rock is a state park. Visitors can walk into the cool shadows and look out at the same stretch of river the pirates once watched. The view is peaceful now. But if you stand there long enough, you can almost imagine a lantern swaying in the darkness and hear a voice calling from the shore, "Tie up for the night, friend. Warm fire, whiskey, good company." For some, it was the last invitation they ever heard. Thank you for listening to Deserted Trails. Subscribe for more true stories from the old frontier.